My name is Eric King. I was held at the ADX, the only federal Supermax in the United States. It's also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, and this is how crime works. As long as it continues to stay open, no one's getting out because that security is too tight. The cells are concrete, and that means everything. Even if you got out of your cell, you're running into door, and then they are gonna kill you. And that had a real impact on me, that level of isolation. That's a brutal situation. I went to ADX in August of 2022, the only federal Supermax in the United States. The reason I was sent to federal prison was because during the Ferguson uprising, there was an empty government building in Kansas City, and I threw 2 molotov cocktails at it. And it got me 10 years in federal prison. I was assaulted by a lieutenant at FCI Florence, and I fought back. And then they prosecuted me. They prosecuted me trying to give me 20 extra years in prison. And so when I won at trial, I was supposed to be sent back to a medium security prison. And instead they said, actually, you have leadership status with some group on the left wing, which is outrageous. And so from that was their excuse to put me in ADX for the last year and a quarter of my bid. Historically, places like Alcatraz, that was the first federal Supermax. A Supermax prison is a prison that will hold you for 24 hours a day all by yourself. So I was at the Oklahoma Transfer Center. So they wake you up at 4 a.m. and you land in Colorado and they march you to whatever bus you're gonna be on. So then the bus, it's very casual then. The bus just drives right to ADX. So the prison is tiny. It's a little baby prison. Normal prisons, federal system have like multiple dorms. This is like a little red office building because most of it is built into the ground where we live. Nothing daunting besides the razor wire. There's an unbroken fence around the prison, and the guards are walking out beside the bus with their guns. You're already handcuffed, you're already in shackles. They just have you walk off and march you right to the holding cells. When I arrived, there was just one other person with me. So the person I was with was a white GD, a gangster disciple. Once you're in the holding cell, they strip you out, make you get naked, squat and cough, look at the bottom of your feet. Inside a federal jail or federal prison, you're given a number. I was 270-90045. The 045 at the end tells you where I'm from. That's Western District of Missouri, Kansas City. And so that number follows you no matter what institution you're at, no matter how many years you've been there. And so they walk you down this long slope. And when you're at the finally bottom of the hill, you're at C unit. And they open the first gate, close it. Then they open a second gate, close it. And they walk you to your cell. And there's no keys to doors. It's all electronic. And they have it on the outside of your door. It has your mugshot, your status, and your number. And that's it. The outside door is a solid steel door. And your inside one is like the old school bars. And so they open both doors and you walk in. So once that door is closed and your cuffs are off, the guards step backwards and now you're not hearing nobody. You are on your own. And now you're doing time. You are there just stuck in this prison. And that's when you got to figure out how you want to do your bid. The amount of prisoners in ADX varies. I think it holds at most 470 something. When I was there, it held 350. So because it's such a hard process to get there, they never fill it. Those beds are empty. One of the things that ADX is known for is it's like almost celebrity prisoners. People like Ramzi Youssef. He was a part of the first World Trade Center bombing. Terry Nichols, of course. Eric Rudolph is another big one. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. One of the biggest named people there is the one that folks know the most now, and that's El Chapo. And he is in H unit and Sam's unit. So his communication is dead. And then obviously Tsarnaev, the Boston bomber. And then there's a couple famous mobsters that come in through there. There are different things that can get you sent to ADX. The most common one is leadership status. And they place that on anyone who has too much power, the high gang leader, stuff like that. Larry Hoover was there. He was the head of the GDs, the Gangster Disciples. Other ones are high profile. You have too much of a say. So that's where you get people like El Chapo, who's both a leader and high profile. If you're a jihadi, you get sent there. Richard Reed tried to kill 300 people. So those cats will all be there and have their own status. If you kill somebody in the Federal Bureau of Prison, people think that you can just get away with that. You cannot. You will go to ADX no matter what. Or if you're a sex offender or a PC person who just cannot be housed anywhere else due to immense violence or you're disrupting, stuff like that, they will eventually have to put you somewhere. And it is sometimes ADX. And so you got the leaders, you got the terrorists, you got the mass murderers, and then you have me. So within ADX, and this is just my experiences, people from different gangs or different fractions, you're no longer beefing because you're behind doors. You're not gonna. No one wants to be a cell warrior, just yelling through the door, "I'm gonna kill you," because the person that you're talking to may also they're also a killer. But if those doors open, that's out the window. And so the only fight that I knew of actually within ADX, it's rare, it was on a range and the orderly was out there. And while the orderly was out there, there's also what's called the law library. They opened that door too. And that cat was from DC, he was a DC black. And them and the Aryan Brotherhood are vicious rivals still. And so it was a setup, the DC cat. And so the Aryan and him battled on this range. And they're like trying to get knives through under the door. And the guards have to like get their chemical weapons or the SWAT team to break it up. But that was just about the only fight I heard of. Something that shocked me was there's a lot of mentally ill people there. There are people that should never be locked down, ever, that desperately need help. You'll hear them screaming, crying, begging for help. And the administration will never give it because they don't care. And that's another shocking aspect, is just seeing how disregarded the lives of the people are in that prison. There are gang members in ADX, and usually it's the highest status ones. But I know that the top echelon are in ADX. The MAs, the bosses of the Bloods, the head of the GDs, the head of the brand, that's the Aryan Brotherhood. Some of these dudes have been in there for 20, 25 years because they're so powerful that if they get out, the prison's afraid of what they will do. And they control hundreds and hundreds of people. So these are very serious cats that do not play games, like D unit, E unit, whatever. I've heard that they put like a majority West Coast people. So it'll be like brand and then their affiliates. And the reason they do clumps is so they can hear. They want to hear if there's gossip. They want to hear news. And that's why they let letters into gang members. They're building a profile. And so they want this information. So we'll let you send a crazy letter so that we can get the crazy one back and know what's going on in the gang. And that's one of the big differences, is that they're constantly collecting intel. In ADX, the way that you interact with gang members is the same way you would interact with anyone else. They are people, and they are talking to you respectfully. And for someone like me, I'm not affiliated. I want nothing to do with any gang. I don't have that in me. I'm not built that way. But some of these dudes are. And as long as you talk to them respectfully, you will be fine wherever. You don't want to cross that line with them. You don't want to ask them weird questions like, what's your hierarchical structure? Who's your leader? You don't do that stuff. But like some of the old heads, they like telling these stories. Like they like telling stories from like San Quentin and Folsom back in the 70s and 80s. And I absorb that information. I want to hear what you're saying, but I will not ask the questions. I will not put myself in a position to look even slightly suspicious, because that's not my business. And one thing you learn in prison is that you mind your business, especially with these most serious cats. I'm on the left-wing spectrum when it comes to politics, and that's not very common inside federal prison. And I have left-wing tattoos. I have anarchy signs. I have different leftist affiliations tattooed visibly on my body. And that's stuff I do get nervous about. But for the most part, because it's behind doors, just like the other gangs have to get along with each other, they never said anything about it. Sometimes they would ask me how I felt about something. Be like, and this was usually in like the step down unit or the release unit, like, oh, did you see that piece of crap Biden do this? And I would just be like, yeah, he is a piece of crap. I don't care about Biden. And they don't understand that always. But I was very cautious, because you don't want to make yourself a target ever. You don't want them to get to another yard and then say like, hey, I met this guy with an anti-fascist tattoo and he was a piece of trash. He's got a green light now. Green light means that anyone can attack you. You don't ever want that to be a target for yourself. So you stay respectful, you stay kind, you stay honest. You don't lie to them. And that just shows that like you can be a respectful stand-up guy. The most people I was around would be cartel guys, jihadis, and Texas Yard gang members. There was never a bad interaction, even with people that hated my politics. Because like these right-wing gangs, they don't like me. And that's like, we're from different worlds, I get it. But behind these doors, there was only kindness, only respect. And that's a good thing for people like me who do not want to have anything but chill. As long as this prison's been open, no one's gotten out. No one's getting out because that security is too tight. Everything is concrete. It's not underground, but it's built into the ground. And then it's just surrounded by the razor wire, so you're not getting through that cell. So ADX has some slightly different security stuff. Anytime you move, your hands are either cuffed behind your back or shackled in front of your waist. At a normal prison, if they call you to the lieutenant's office, you just walk. You got to go to the medical, you literally just walk right to medical. At ADX, you always have the 2 guards. They always have a hand on you. And so you go nowhere alone. You go nowhere without 2 guards. And if you're in one of the harsher restrictive units, like range 13, which is a further disciplinary unit, they'll have cameras in your cells. The cells are concrete, and that means everything. So the beds are poured concrete. It's connected to the wall. It's on the ground. The roof is concrete. The walls are concrete. Sometimes there's a little concrete stool right by the desk so you can sit on comfortably and write. I never sat on that stool because it was so wildly uncomfortable. Usually everything's metal, and people can do good things with that. You're not doing much with concrete. The window that they have is a very skinny, maybe 3 or 4 inches by 2 feet. At the very top, you can see a slither of the sky. Everything else, all you see is the side of buildings, the other units. I could do 3 steps and then 4 steps. And you got to find a way to exist in that little world. In regular prisons, you'll cell rotate, but it's usually like once a year, maybe once every 2 years. With cell rotations, they do this in ADX, and it's every 2 or 3 months. And that's in theory, so you don't get too comfortable, but also so you don't have time to plot your escape. So they try to make it seem like we're just digging holes and like old Shawshank Redemption stuff. No one's doing that. We don't have metal. But that's their theory. It's to disrupt us. It's to disrupt your pattern. When you're going down the units, we call it a bubble. And the guards do sit in there, and that's where they watch recreation. And that's who opens the doors. So if a guard wants Johnson out of C5, Johnson C5, and then the bubble guard has to make sure everything else is closed. You got 2 men, and they pull you out, and then Johnson closes your door. The guards then have to check in with the bubble. The bubble then checks to see, are you registered for medical? Because if you're not, then like, are these guards trying to break you out? So it's all bubble. They control everything at that section. The prison for the BOP standards, Bureau of Prison, federal prisons, is actually kind of nice. A lot of these prisons were built like in the 20s. It's over 100 years old. But it does have a dirty old feel to it. At the ADX, they have different cell blocks, or we call them ranges or units. And a lot of them are shut down now. There's like 6 left. And so I was on C unit, that is disciplinary unit. B unit is the control unit. That's for people who have a set sentence. They tell them you're going to be on this unit for 5 years, 10 years, 4 years, whatever. And then they have H unit. H unit is for people on SAMs, special administrative measures. And those are almost always jihadis or people who ordered murders from prison. And then there's the elderly range, and that is called KB. There's a KA and a KB. And KA is for pre-release people that are going home. And KB is for people that are never getting out. And then there's J unit. And J unit is for people that are working their way out, but not for a long time, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But when I got closer to my release date, the last 3 months, they sent me to KA, the pre-release unit. And the only way that's different is that you get set time out of your cell with your group. I was there with a cartel guy and some PC guy from Washington, who had butchered people. So you get an hour out of your cell indoor rec with them. I made one really close friend, and I won't say his name, but it was in KA unit, and he would talk to me through the door. He'd been in other prisons with people I knew. He was accused of transcribing speeches for Al-Qaeda. And so he got 18 years for that. And me and him would talk and talk, and sometimes we'd butt heads, but we also had a lot we had in common. And when you have that kind of respect and mutual bond, you can develop a relationship and a close friendship. And we were able to for those 1 hour a day that we got to communicate. The difference between guards in ADX and other prisons is just the 2-man hold. because they have so much power, because they control everything behind the doors, they talk more trash because they know you can't do anything about it. They insult your family more. And then they play those games with like the mail and stuff, knowing you can't do anything. At a penitentiary, if a guard acted that way, it'd be bad news for them. They would have trouble. But in ADX, who cares? You're not going to do nothing about it. And I don't want to say it's every one of them. It's not everyone. It's probably 70%. But that other 30% don't do anything about it. So there were times where a guard would ask me a question and I would forget that you need to look straight ahead. And I would turn just casually. Hey, Eric, did you see soccer today? And it'd be just this short a turn. And you're up against the wall. You're up against that wall fast. Don't turn your head, inmate. If you got a history of violent assault, they're slamming you on the ground. You learn very quickly that some of them just treat it like a job. And it's usually the people that have been there for 15, 20 years. And then there's the guards that think that they're in a gang, because they are. That guard group is a vicious gang. And these are the ones that will take away your recreation because they're mad at you. These are the ones that will rip up your mail or just drop it outside your cell so you see it, but you can't have it. These are the guards that will intentionally give your mail to someone else. There aren't enough bad words to describe them. And I've had guards that were working visiting, and I've had them sit my family at a different booth for 15 to 20 minutes. And we only have a couple hours. I've had guards that made my mom, who survived breast cancer, not give her a chair. So she had to just stand or sit on the concrete for an hour before I demanded, like, Mom, at this point, they're disrespecting me. You got to talk to them. And they do this on purpose because of the power situation. They feel that power. They feel dominance. They want to feel bigger than. And it is the most despicable profession I can think of. These are the same people that tortured me a couple years earlier. I don't have a word for these people. When you're at the ADX, the worst thing you can experience is the isolation. You think that it's going to be the same as being in a shoe, but like you're not hearing your friends talk. And so the isolation feels different. It feels more intense. It weighs on you more. When you can't touch another person or interact or laugh, that wears on you. That's a brutal situation. It's a quiet hell, and they call it that because it's so gosh darn quiet. You can hear shrieks if people are yelling loud enough. You can hear the pain that people have that they're expressing outward, but you're alone. So that shocked me, and that had a real impact on me, that level of isolation. And you're supposed to get your TV the first day because that's a part of programming. It's a psychological program to make sure you don't lose your mind. I didn't get mine for 2 weeks. And it was hard. No books, no radio, no mail, no magazines, no newspaper, no TV. So you're just by yourself. And that wasn't what I expected. Because you're so alone and because you're so isolated, you do start to get like, I don't want to say a dizziness, but almost like a minor vertigo to where like you do lose, like, I don't know if I'm facing north or west. I don't know if I'm underground, above ground. I don't know anything. In ADX, the way that I stayed what I would consider mentally strong was having my eye on freedom. I had a release date. A lot of people do not have that. I have people that are looking forward to me and counting on me being home. And then I had my 5-star system. I ensured that I had dopamine. I ensured that I had a purpose. There is a psychology department. They will give you packets to read and try to help yourself. If you're having a really, really suicidal time, the psych person, like real talk, was a very decent person. She seemed like she really cared despite the restrictions they placed on her. The hardest part about being in was not knowing what my family was going through. One of my lowest moments inside is when I thought I was getting released sooner. I was supposed to get out in September, and then at the last second, U.S. probation changed the rules. That hurt bad. In ADX, you're responsible for your space. No orderly is going to come in and clean your cell. They don't have a janitor. So if you get body wash soap, you use that. If you buy it on commissary, you use that to clean your cell, your toilet, and your shower. So you try to keep your cell as spotless as possible, but you also do that because if you're moving cells, because you do cell rotations every 30 days or 60 days, depending on what unit you're in. And when you cell rotate, you don't want to disrespect the person coming after you. And so the TV is a chain. Don't think that it's not. There are people that have lost their minds just falling into that world. They lose track of what's important. They stop caring about their actual existence and start caring about Sheldon's existence and Big Bang Theory or whatever. And that's a dangerous slope. When it comes to news, they have news stations. They have a right-wing one, a moderate one, and then what they call left-wing. And they have those until something pops off. When George Floyd happened, they cut the news because they don't want these prisoners to get motivated. They don't want us to get a little fire in our belly. So we have the news until we don't. There are some things that I guess could be considered bonuses to the cells. At a USP, your attention is fight or flight that you might get stabbed or you might have to stab somebody. Because I'm a little guy, I don't like violence very much. I hate it. And I don't want to have someone try to book me. So not to prop this up as something good, but because I had a short time there, that would have been the one silver lining. That was at least the least bad thing. ADX is a well-run prison in the terms that it is supposed to be ran poorly. When Alcatraz closed, the next federal Supermax became the USP Marion. That became a control unit because there was so much violence, so much radicalism. In January of 1995, they opened what was known as ADX, the Administrative Maximum, in Florence, Colorado. The warden of ADX, when I was there, their job is to make money. So you're going to cut things like programming. You're going to cut the quality of the food. Food every single year, every single month, worse, 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 worse. Everything about that place is built to be trash. The food in ADX is still run on the Bureau of Prisons national menu. So on Mondays, you're getting the same thing you get everywhere. Wednesday is hamburger day. Thursday is chicken day. Friday is fish. That's the same every day. And the quality of it is what you would expect from a Supermax prison, as in that it might as well be dog food. Like I was on the no meat diet because I used to be vegan. And so I would get on Wednesdays, I get a little veggie patty and it's horse food. And that's why people spend so much money on commissary. Everything's rubber because they don't want you to be able to sharpen it. You're not getting anything metal. If you're at a lower security institution, the food there is the best you'll ever have. It is cereal with milk and big pancakes and syrup. Even in the shoe, it's good. When you go up to the higher custody levels, a shoe in a penitentiary is almost inedible. When I was at USP Lee in Virginia, it was filled with ants. That's why I have ants tattooed on my face, because I had to get acclimated when I was free because it caused so much trauma. But the food in penitentiaries is almost unedible, and it mirrors the food in ADX. And then as the national menu came and the food administrators started getting bonuses, they cut the food budget, which means the food gets worse and worse. The commissary is good for a lockdown situation. On a yard, if this was the commissary, people would riot. But because it's comparable to a shoe, a special housing unit, it feels okay. You can buy peanut butter, you can buy socks, you can buy sweaters. They used to do jelly, they got rid of it because they said people were making hooch out of it. So there's ways for people to make really good food because they have ingenuity. They can turn a bag of chips into a pizza. You can spend $100 a week. So some men have that kind of money. I don't. So I'd buy 3 bags of coffee that last me a month, 2 peanut butters that last me a month, a handful of candy bars, and then stamps. That's how you get stamps to write your family. So if you want to get a hold of your family, you can buy up to, I think, 40 stamps. They're called a book. And they're $22, $24, whatever. And that enables you to be able to send out letters to those you love. In other prisons, you can walk to medical when you're sick. Medical will come around twice a day. That's where they pass out pills to people that need them. And the pills, sometimes if you have health issues, they'll give you Wellbutrin for mental health. Sometimes they'll give you tranquilizers because they want you to sleep. You never see the doctor until it's too late. I've seen men that had to go to surgery because things were so bad for them. And these people then had to get rushed to the hospital again because their blood got infected. I watched this happen 3 times on my own. One of the roots of my teeth died. And so I was in the worst pain I can imagine feeling besides the torture. And you ask for help. I asked for help for 10 days. No one cares. That's 10 days without eating. That's 10 days barely sleeping. And they eventually come and take you out and they pull it and they say like it wasn't an emergency. Like that's the sort of stuff that you don't have to tolerate in a normal shoe. You can force that stuff in a shoe. In regards to recreation, you rotate days. One day will be inside, one day will be outside, depending on the elements. And the indoor recreation cage is on your unit. It's the other side of the hallway that you're in. And it's just a room. It's a room that's about the size of 3 of your cells, and it's got a dip bar in it and a pull-up bar, and then it has a little bench for you to sit on. It's not a bench, it's a concrete slab, and that's it. Outside rec is the same way. You go into this dog kennel or concrete box, and you get an hour, maybe hour and a half if the guards are being nice, but that's a time where you can talk to people. Because if you do outside rec on your range and you're on a normal range, they put you in dog kennels and there's 3 or 4 on each side. So that's a chance for you to talk to people. So that's why most cats go to outside rec. And then the other option is screaming at the top of your lungs. And I hated that. I think I did it with one person for the Super Bowl. He bet for the Eagles. I'm Kansas City through and through. And so we bet on that to where now he owes me burpees. I've got 20 burpees on Chiefs. And then if he doesn't have his TV on and no one else is trying to do it, then he can yell back. And that's obviously very different because in other prisons, you can just casually talk through the walls. They have classes at ADX. 99% of them are over the TV. And so it'll be like Roman history. And you'll watch that channel. And it's just the basic like PBS stuff from 1980. So if you want to get points to maybe bring down your sentence somehow, you'll have to do these classes on the TV and they'll give you a booklet. You have to answer like a booklet question. It's so stupid. And if you turn in enough packets, you get like a treat, like a pack of peanuts and stuff like that. If you have been in that prison long enough and you have a certain amount of good conduct, you can go to what's called the gym for classes. And it is like it feels like an empty gymnasium, I guess, but it's got 5 phone booths in it. And that's usually for like psych programs, like mental health stuff. But for those moments, you can talk to each other, which is interesting. But that's such a rare occasion. I was never able to get into those. The people running the programs are usually the recreation department or the education department. Recreation runs like the fun classes, like here's crossword puzzles. And then the education department does all the other stuff. So you'll get the booklet or whatever they have for that class and you'll fill it out and then you'll turn it into the guard. And then they actually do review it. They will like write notes and stuff saying like, oh, this is smart. Like, oh, I'm so proud of you. And so it's infantizing. Like it makes you feel like a baby. But at the same time, for some people, that's the only positive reinforcement they'll get all year, their entire lives. So there is a bonus in that for the people that need that. At normal prisons, there's an actual library. And you walk in and you actually get books. In ADX, they have a sheet of, it's a paper. It has like 4 pages of paper, and it has a list of the books that they have available. And you send a cop out to education department. And you write down what book you want and what its number is. And if they have that book, they'll bring it to you. If not, you don't get a book that week. And KA unit, the pre-release unit, you can email now. The emails have to get approved by SIS, but you can send it. And then you can also buy an MP3 player. And so the Bureau of Prisons approves a certain group of music and you sit on the computer and it can't have cuss words or nothing. But like I download like Taylor Swift or like some emo stuff. Something to let me express my feelings. It costs like $3 a song. It's very expensive. But that also gives you time to walk to other cells. In non-release units, it's very difficult to interact. So you can talk to the orderly. An orderly, and this is for all prisons, an orderly is someone that their job is literally just to clean. You literally just come out for an hour and mop. I met some cool dudes through that too. Like some of the head commissioners of the Nuestra Familia. Great guys. I just get along with them so well. In that prison, you still have the same disciplinary expectations as in any other prison. In normal prisons, no matter where you're at, whether it's a SHU or on a compound, you have to stand for count. They do multiple counts throughout the day, before lunch, before dinner, and you have to be standing. But at ADX, they're like, I don't care. They just see if you're there, they see the shape of your body, and that's it. There were countless hunger strikes at ADX, and it's almost always the jihadis standing up for themselves because the ADX would not allow some of the tenets of their faith. They would go on long hunger strikes, and there was lots and lots of forced feedings. And they would force feed them like you hear about at Guantanamo Bay. And those men would be tortured. And so they would do deep hunger strikes, like 30, 40 days. And I have nothing but respect for that because that's a level of determination that I don't have. My daily routine was based off my previous 4.5 years in segregation. And so I would get up at 6 for breakfast or earlier and clean my cell. And then I would eat breakfast, then it's laps. I'm hitting laps, 1,000 at least. And that's small laps. And then I would do my burpees, and that's a push-up, like a jump push-up sort of situation. And then I'd take a shower. And then around that time, somewhere between 11 to noon is lunch. And then after lunch, my favorite show was on TV. And so that would be my TV time. And so then it's more laps, reading, taking a nap. And so from 4 to midnight, you are starting. Unless you save like your little meatloaf or whatever. And then after dinner, it is letter writing. I would intentionally write letters during that time. It had to include reading because your brain has got to stay active. And that's what kept me sane. I made a ranking system of like how good a day could be. In the morning, I would list every single thing that could go well. And that would include like, I cleaned well, the guards didn't harass me, food was bearable. A perfect day would be the Chiefs won, Manchester United won. That's a 5-star day. That's what I would call it. For me personally, my first year within ADX, I was not given a phone call. I was on what's called a communication management variable, and that's what led to me having tougher restrictions than some. I was given limited mail. It would usually be 2 to 3 months late and no visits. After about 8 months, I was given non-contact visits back. And so my wife would have to drive the 2 hours from Denver, and she'd get a couple hours in and then have to drive right back. And those visits are non-contact, and you have to call on a phone so the guard can hang up on you at any time. They can cut the line in the middle of a conversation and shut it short. And they do. They do that sometimes. I was able to get maybe a visit a week and maybe 2 phone calls a month. When I would do the phone calls, it was in KA unit. And so it was only during my rec time. So it'd be either you talk on the phone for 15 minutes or you get recreation. And so what they do is there's a cell at the end of the unit and they open the door electronically and there's one of our little phones in there. And you have to pick it up, make sure the SIS guy is there, and then you type in your code and then they answer and hopefully you get a call. And if they don't answer, you're out. They kick you out of that room. In the other units in ADX, they will wheel the phone to your inside door. And so you take the phone like through the bars and do your little typing, and they'll give you 2 or 3 chances out there to get a hold of somebody. You can't just call anybody. And they can say no, they can block you. But the phone calls, you have to get it approved ahead of time by SIS. And then my mail was always so far behind. And they would lose it or they'd reject some. You can't talk about certain stuff. But other stuff, like they want to build a profile, so they do let in certain things that other prisons wouldn't, but then reject certain things if like they're too loving, I guess. Like they're weird. It's a weird situation, but with every single letter, no matter who you are in ADX, they are reading every single word. It's not like other prisons where they'll just scan it and send it through. They have to run a lot of them by the FBI, and your specific SIS officer, he's the one who determines whether you get your mail or not. It's just them. And so I had to pray that my SIS officer wasn't on some BS and would actually let me talk to my family. They're listening to every single word you say on the phone. They're listening to every single word you say at visit, because you might not be somebody, but you might know people who are. Your spouse might go to visit at the same time as somebody and pass a message that way. And they're doing this to build a profile. They want to know what the Bloods are saying. They want to know who's passing messages to who. At visiting, they have a concrete stool, and you sit on this stool or you sit on the phone ledge, and your partner or family, whoever it is, comes in, they sit on the other side of you in their chair or stool, and you have to pick up the phone and you have to dial a number. There's people there from all over the United States, and their family has to fly in. And then if the guards decide no visits that day, they just waste all that money. Or if the guards say you said the wrong thing because they're being jerks or whatever, that's it. That's it. They don't care that you just flew in from Azerbaijan or Toronto. I've seen that happen, and it's heartbreaking. Prior to ADX, I'd gone 5 years without seeing my family. I think I'd seen them like 6 times. And so your kids grow up. And so the first time my wife brought the kids to visiting, I didn't recognize them, and I don't think they recognized me because I had long hair now. I had a big-ass beard and stuff. And so you have to like reconnect, and that's hard. It's hard to like connect with someone for that hour or two. There was never a bad visit. With legal visits, it's slightly different because you are taken to a different part of the visiting room. Same room, just different part. And for me, I was always shackled during legal visits too, which was brutal because sometimes you have to sign things. But I would sit on the ledge and they have like this circle, kind of like at a bank, with like the slits through it. So you would get the legal visits that way in a slightly bigger room. It's still got the cameras in it and everything, except for you can just talk through the little slits. It's all non-contact. You're never touching them. And they have to make sure the prison knows ahead of time that they're coming. What led me to ADX is a very long, detailed story. But it led with an assault in a mop closet where I was assaulted by a lieutenant at FCI Florence and I fought back. After the fight with the lieutenant, I was taken to a room, and it's called a 4-point room, and I was chained to a bed and the letter X. Chained up like this. Your legs and your arms are stretched as far as they can go. And it's the most immense pain I've ever felt in my life. And I was left there for 7 hours. They prosecuted me trying to give me 20 extra years in prison. And I took that to trial. And then I won at trial. Less than 1% of prisoners ever went, or people in life, ever went at federal trial. And I did. And so when I won at trial, I was supposed to be sent back to a medium security prison. And instead, they said, actually, you have leadership status with some group on the left wing, which is outrageous. And so from that was their excuse to put me in ADX for the last year and a quarter of my bid. It was for leadership status, the same way as the top gang leaders. When I was being transferred to ADX, I thought it was a joke. The reason I was so shocked and thought they were joking is because I only had less than 2 years left. And so it made no sense to me why someone with such a little bid would have to go to a prison that is known for housing the worst of the worst, these infamous people, these big-time people that you hear about, and I did not fit that bill. So it confused the hell out of me. When I showed up there, the literal only things I was worried about was getting set up by the guards. I had that previous violent assault, they said, on a lieutenant. So even though I won that case in trial, like I won, but they don't care. So I was always worried about these same guards saying I was trying to escape, saying I made a move on them, just any excuse to bash me with a baton. So my first probably 2 or 3 weeks, I ripped off part of my sheet and I tied it amongst the bottom part of the inside cells. So they're like this, you can't open that door if it's tied shut. So that way, if they tried to sneak me in the middle of the night, I would at least have some warning. I could strap up or get ready to fight. And that was my big concerns. I would say to my younger self, if I had a chance, that you're doing good, you're doing well. The only way you will win this bid is by continuing to love life and love yourself and your family. So don't let them steal that from you. If I could say one thing to people in the free world, it would be to please picture prisoners as someone you love. If your grandparent, your father, your mother, your brother, your partner, if they did something horrible in the eyes of the state or government and they were placed in prison, how would you want them to be treated? Then please apply that with every single person inside, because they are that to somebody and they deserve to be loved. And that is how we grow as a society. So please treat prisoners well and with empathy. I was released from ADX on December 13th, 2023. ADX doesn't hold very many people, so a lot fewer actually get released, and it's rare. It's rare that you get a glimpse into that prison without having to give them so much of yourself, so many decades of your life. When I was in the pre-release unit, there was 7 people, and it was good knowing that there were 7 people that were going to get out there, but it was also sad knowing that there was 343 that weren't. The hardest part about getting out of ADX was being around people. People being close to me was triggering. My daughter would like sit near me, and it would burn my skin almost. Like, don't touch me right now. And you have to unlearn that. You have to deinstitutionalize. And trying to convince little kids why it's important to clean their rooms, why it's important to do dishes, why it's important to not have trash around, because what if someone comes in and sees it? What if someone comes in and wants to hurt us because our room's not clean? And so it was deprogramming myself so that I don't have my prison brain on children. And I never did it in a bad way, but it was always there here. My little one had to teach me to use QR codes. And that can make you feel really dumb. Like, it can make you feel like the world doesn't want you anymore, that you are the worst of the worst and you don't belong to this society anymore. And that's hard. That's hard to shake. And a lot of people don't shake it. And that takes me a while. I get lots of therapy, lots of like mood stabilizing medicine, because if I don't want to revert back to that Eric. A lot of people aren't able, they don't have a loving system. But if I didn't have support, I probably would have been back in prison. Because like, I need help. We all need help. Since I was released, I got the opportunity to be a paralegal. People gave me an opportunity to be a paralegal, which I'm grateful for. And I was also able to get a book deal with PM Press. PM Press believed in me. They gave me a chance. The title of the book is called A Clean Hell, because that's what a warden described it as. He said it's a clean version of hell. And I couldn't agree more.
Hi, I'm a producer on How Crime Works. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe and comment below with more ideas of topics you'd like us to cover in this series.